According to Dana Milbank, Donald Trump held a super spreader event at the White House and got COVID-19 himself. This, by the way, is now the great sin. If you get COVID-19 yourself, this means that you are a sinner of some unforgivable sort, which is going to be really weird because I would assume at some point, some people in the White House, like say Jen Psaki, would get COVID. Does that mean that she was some sort of evil character? Dana Milbank says he praised QAnon adherents, embraced violent white supremacists, waged a racist campaign against Black Lives Matter demonstrators. Remember, according to, it's as though you spit into a computer 1,000 Dana Milbank columns, and a Dana Milbank column popped out the other end. Right? The AI actually came up with this column. Trump got press coverage as favorable as, or better than, Biden is getting today. Sure, Biden has had his troubles with the Delta variant, Afghanistan, and inflation, but the economy is rebounding impressively. He has signed major legislation. He has restored some measure of decency, calm, and respect for democratic institutions. Has he? Has he, though, Dana? Are you sensing a sense of calm and decency from this White House? Are you respecting, how about respect for democratic institutions? You got the White House ripping on the Supreme Court every single day. You have the Democrats in Congress talking about killing the filibuster. You have the Democrats talking about completely rewriting the bargain between the American citizen and their government. You're talking about the federal government cramming down vax mandates on 80 million employees across the United States. I feel like the restoration isn't going all that well. But here's the point. For the media, it doesn't matter what Joe Biden does. Joe Biden ought to be treated with kid gloves because he is a Democrat. And so, according to Dana Milbank, the real threat here is the media are being too kind to the authoritarians. He says, we need a skeptical independent press. But how about being partisans for democracy? The country is in an existential struggle between self-governance and an authoritarian alternative. And we in the news media collectively have given equal, if not slightly more favorable, treatment to the authoritarians. Yes, that's right. I'm sure that the media, Dana Milbank, have been very favorable to the authoritarians like Donald Trump at the expense of Joe Biden. It's been very rough for Joe Biden. It's not that he's a crap president. It is that the media have been on the side of Donald Trump and the authoritarians. According to Dana Milbank, unbelievably enough, the media are kind to Donald Trump, but mean to Joe Biden. Now, this is the last vestige of people who are desperate to save Joe Biden, considering that he's just a really, really bad president. But it's going to tie into the narrative that we're going to see over the next couple of years. Right? The narrative that we're going to see all the way up to 2024, because they tried it in 2020 and it kind of sort of worked, just because Donald Trump is such an outrageous character that the media were able to pin on him pretty much everything. Right? Donald Trump committed one of the cardinal sins of politics. Okay, the way that you win in politics is you make it very difficult to vote for your opponent. You make it very easy to vote for you. Donald Trump makes it difficult to vote for his opponent and very easy for people to vote against him. He makes it hard for people to vote for him, right? That's the story of 2020. In 2016, he made it very difficult to vote for Hillary Clinton. He made it hard to vote for him, but people just hated Hillary more. By 2020, that math had shifted a little bit. Okay, he made it very easy. Democrats and the media are now going to try out the same playbook on Republicans. So right now, it's very difficult to vote for Democrats. Democrats have done a horrible job running the country. They're in control of the Senate. They're in control of the House. They're in control of the presidency. And we have seen a stagnating economic response to the pandemic. We have seen calls for a renewed lockdown. We've seen complete foreign policy collapse in Afghanistan. We're seeing additional chaos in the international scene, which we'll get to in a moment. And so the media are left with the same narrative that they tried out in 2020. And this narrative, of course, is that America is a white supremacist place and Republicans are representative of that underlying white supremacism. Okay, good evidence of how media coverage actually operates, for example, is the coverage of a white nationalist march that happened in Washington, D.C. by a group called Patriot Front. Okay, now, I'd never heard of this group because why would you hear of this group? It's not a particularly large group. It's not a group of people who have a major impact in the American public debate. But basically, a bunch of white supremacists decided to rally in Washington, D.C. And apparently this was worthy of coverage by places like the Daily Beast, by places like the Washington, right? Like the fact is you needed national coverage of the white supremacist rally that happened in front of the Lincoln Memorial. According to the Daily Beast, a group of white supremacists stormed through downtown Washington, D.C. on Saturday evening, bearing American flags, mildly menacing plastic shields, while marching to the beat of a snare drum down the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. But after chanting aggressively about their plans to reclaim America, their intended show of force stalled spectacularly when they lost their ride. While the group had marched through the city with threatening chants about their plan to reclaim America, by the end of the night, it was not even clear how they intended to reclaim their U-Haul. The rally, by more than 100 members of the Patriot, 100 people, woohoo! Boy howdy, they're probably going to overthrow the democracy, those 100 people. held just blocks from the White House, sparked fear among many bystanders, immediately attracted the attention of law enforcement, who shadowed the group to apparently prevent any clashes from erupting. Members wore uniform white gaiters, sunglasses, blue jackets, khaki pants, brown boots, and hats. Some donned plastic shin guards, seeming to anticipate violence. The Patriot Front leader, Thomas Rousseau, spoke beside the Capitol reflecting pool. Bystanders booed. Asked about the reason for the march, Rousseau said, "Our demonstrations are an exhibition of our unified capability to organize, to show our strength, not as brawlers or public nuisances, but as men capable of illustrating a message and seeking an America that more closely resembles the interests of its true people." No arrests were made. And apparently the cops just kind of stood around waiting for these people to leave. 24 members of the white supremacist group could not leave. They were apparently stranded. Members of the group had waited in a one-way roundabout to depart in one of the U-Hauls they'd used to transport themselves, but the large rented moving van could not fit them all. So many of them were forced to wait in 45-degree darkness as the bulky orange vehicle made multiple trips over the course of the nearly 3 hours. Patriot Front used to be called Vanguard America. Okay, so why exactly is this relevant? The reason it's relevant is because this actually received fairly widespread media coverage. Okay, this was a story that deserved basically no media coverage because here's the reality. When 100 people rally for anything, that is not a big story. When you have 100 people rally for, like, I can get 100 people to do pretty much anything in the United States. It's a country of 330 million people. Okay, but this received fairly widespread media coverage. And the question is why? Why would white nationalists go viral on Twitter? Like 100 of them marching by the Lincoln Memorial. And the answer is because this ties into a broader Democratic narrative. So when you talk about Dana Milbank, the coverage of Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, you have to understand that it is not merely the coverage directly of who the president is that matters. It is the coverage of all the issues in the United States that directly impact politics. So when you make it seem in the United States, for example, that there is a grave white supremacist threat, which is exactly the case that was being made by many members of the media last year, when you make that case over and over and over, and meanwhile you suggest that anyone who opposes Black Lives Matter is in fact a white supremacist, the movement and the group is in fact a white supremacist. They're not just opposed to riots and looting. They're white supremacists. If you believe that, then this makes you a bad person, right? That sort of narrative drives how politics is done in the United States. And you're seeing the media re-up this, right? They're re-upping this in time for 2022. Again, the broader Democratic narrative, which they tried out in 2020, and it worked for them, was the idea that America was under true authoritarian threat from the right. And that was exacerbated in the aftermath of the November election by Donald Trump talking loosely about the evils of the election and suggesting the election had been stolen from him. And then it was exacerbated more gravely by January 6th and the media claiming that we were just moments from a coup attempt. And now the Democratic through line is that if you oppose Black Lives Matter in 2020, if you oppose the riots and the looting, if you thought it was a lie that America's police are systemically racist, or more broadly, that America was systemically racist, this means you are part of the authoritarian white nationalist movement. That was the line they used in 2020. Then they moved that through January 6th, which they said was a white nationalist uprising that was just moments away from seizing the country. And now they're moving that into the halls of Congress. So you have Ilhan Omar trying to make the case that Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene are a true threat to the United States. And so, of course, is Kevin McCarthy because they're being mean to Ilhan Omar. Hey, now, here's the thing about Ilhan Omar. She's a terrible human being. Ilhan Omar is, in fact, an advocate on behalf of terrorists in the past. She literally wrote a letter to a judge. That judge was being asked to rule on the case of a man from Minnesota who was trying to join ISIS. She wrote a letter to the guy saying that he was just a victim of the American system. And so the judge should go easy on him. This is Ilhan Omar, who voted against Iron Dome funding for Israel, which is a solely protective technology that prevents Hamas missiles from hitting the interior of Israel. Ilhan Omar sympathizes with terrorist groups like Hamas, okay, against Israel. Ilhan Omar is a terrible member of Congress. Now, none of this means that people should be sending death threats to anybody because this is a free, civilized country in which you should be able to express your opinions without fear of death threats. Death threats are illegal for a reason. Okay, but Ilhan Omar is now saying that if she receives criticism or if somebody makes an untoward joke about her, that this is just the threat to American democracy writ large. And Democrats are going to try and trot out this playbook. So while Dana Milbank claims that the media are upholding authoritarianism by being mean to Joe Biden, the reason he means that is because many members of the media think the same. They believe that the narrative in American politics is that the Democrats are the good party and the Republicans are the white nationalist evil party. And they're going to do whatever they can to forward that story. Here is Ilhan Omar making this case on State of the Union.
What is it like to hear that kind of blatant bigotry, blatant Islamophobia, coming from a fellow elected member of the House of Representatives?
It's shocking and unacceptable. And, it's very unbecoming of a congresswoman to use that kind of derogatory, dangerous, inciting language against a colleague. Many of us thought, post 9/11 that we were on the mends.
Many of us thought since 9/11, you mean since something happened to some people? So that 9/11? Congresswoman Omar? Okay, but again, this is part of the broader narrative. Now, here's the thing. When you watch those white nationalists march on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and there are 100 of them, and they can't even get organized enough to get a U-Haul out of town, does that seem like a threat to the system to you? Did it really seem like we were on the verge of being overthrown on January 6th last year? Or did it seem like a bunch of droogs and idiots decided to invade the Capitol building, get themselves arrested, and then spend the next year in jail? Because it seemed a lot more like the latter to me. That doesn't mean that Donald Trump said good things between the November election and January 6th. He did not. I was highly critical of it. You can go listen to it. It does not mean that the people of January 6th were not a threat to life and limb to some police officers because they did some physical damage to some police officers. They harmed people and they should go to jail for that. What it does mean is that if you're looking at the systemic power in the United States, the systemic power in the United States is behind the opinion of people like Dana Milbank. And Dana Milbank is openly acknowledging what many in the media believe, which is their job to protect Democrats from the vicissitudes of fortune. It is their job to protect Democrats from the reality of their own rule, because if we expose the American public to how bad they are at their jobs, the authoritarians might take over. Now, the reality is that the true authoritarians in American life, the ones who have institutional power backing them, are the people who are talking about shutting down your daily life because of an Omicron variant that, by the way, is almost certainly less deadly than Delta. The people who have control over your daily life are the people who want more control over your daily life. The supposed white nationalist authoritarian threat to the United States is not from the right. The racist threat to the United States on a cultural level is from people who advocate on behalf of a 1619 project that pushes the notion that if you are white in the United States, you carry some sort of race guilt based on the color of your skin, and that if you're black in the United States, you are inherently a victim of the system. That is a message not echoed by a fringe, crazy few. That is a message echoed by nearly everyone in the mainstream media. Remember, Ilhan Omar is sitting there on State of the Union, having retained her spot on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, talking about why Lauren Boebert should lose her minority committee assignment because Lauren Boebert made an ill-advised joke about Ilhan Omar carrying a bomb in her backpack. Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar is an open, raging anti-Semite, and the Democrats have repeatedly let her off the hook for it. And the media still have Ilhan Omar on to talk about what a victim she is in American society and how American society is deeply racist. So which side actually has the in order to actually effectuate a coup, you have to actually have the power. You have to have some institutional power to back you. You can't effectuate a coup with a bunch of idiots from your local drinking club. To effectuate a coup, you have to have some sort of institutional support. The institutional supports in the United States are all on behalf of a left that mirrors the priorities of Dana Milbank. And he knows this, which is why he's attempting to shame everybody on the media left into joining his crusade not to honestly cover the Biden administration. How's this for a title? Ben Shapiro Show subscriber destroys like button with clicks and logic. I'd watch that. Make it happen, gang.